Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a narrative that traces all the way back to the very dawn of human existence. Okay, let's dive into this because the source material we're looking at outlines a seriously dramatic historical chain reaction. It explores how humanity's very first transgressions began, setting off this massive domino effect that honestly still resonates with us today.
So how exactly did the very first sins begin on Earth? It's a fascinating question, right? To truly understand the roots of moral and societal collapse as outlined in our source text, we kind of have to strip away the entire modern world. We need to flash back to a completely empty Earth, a time when the very first humans, Adam and Eve, were literally the only inhabitants. No cities, no complex societies, just the absolute beginning of the human story.
Section 1. The First Human Society.
Now, in this earliest era of humanity, there obviously weren't any established communities or towns. Instead, our source material explains that a very specific divine system was put into place for human reproduction. Basically, every time Eve had a pregnancy, she would give birth to twins, specifically one boy and one girl. But to populate the earth while still maintaining a strict boundary, the divine law dictated a very clear rule. A boy must marry the twin sister from a different pregnancy, not his own twin. They had to marry across the pairs.
And what's really interesting about this is how it highlights the origin of the very first human conflict. Adam had two sons, Habil and Qabil. You might know them from Western traditions as Abel and Cain. Now, they weren't twins themselves. They each had their own twin sister. Habil's twin sister was considered, well, average-looking. However, Qabil's twin sister, a woman named Aklima, was exceptionally beautiful.
According to the narrative, this right here is exactly where human desire first clashed with divine law. Qabil decided he just did not want to marry Habil's sister. He felt completely entitled to his own twin, Aklima, simply because of her beauty. The text describes how Satan sparked arrogance and jealousy in Qabil's heart, essentially convincing him he deserved better. So despite his father Adam's repeated warnings and explanations of the divine rule, Qabil stubbornly rejected it, and with that he laid the very first brick on the path of sin.
Section 2. The Test of Sacrifice.
So, to resolve this bitter dispute peacefully, Adam instituted a divine test. Both brothers were instructed to present a sacrifice to Allah. And the absolutely crucial point to note here is how their offerings reflected their inner states. Habil, driven by genuine piety and sincerity, went out and offered the absolute best sheep from his flock. Qabil, on the other hand, approached the whole test with total arrogance and resentment. Instead of offering his best crops, he gathered a pile of rotten, spoiled, and degraded grain to present as a sacrifice. Then comes the decisive, super dramatic moment. As the source describes, a miraculous fire descended directly from the sky. But it only consumed Habil's pure, excellent offering, leaving Qabil's rotten crops completely untouched. The divine verdict was crystal clear, but rather than accepting it, you know what happens? The jealousy in Qabil's heart instantly erupts into a violent, all-consuming hatred for his brother.
Section 3. Earth's Very First Murder.
Qabil's unchecked jealousy had now entirely corrupted his heart, pushing him to actually threaten his own brother's life. But before the tragic act, Habil delivers this incredibly profound response. He says, "Even if you raise your hand to kill me, I will not raise my hand against you. I fear Allah." This just highlights an unbelievable contrast, doesn't it? On one side, you have Habil's absolute piety and restraint, and on the other, Qabil's blind rage. Shortly after this exchange, Qabil follows his brother up a mountain and, completely consumed by jealousy, commits the first murder in human history.
But the narrative doesn't just end with the murder. It immediately shifts to the tense aftermath. Qabil was struck with absolute panic. Think about it. He was suddenly carrying the first dead body on Earth and had absolutely no idea what to do with it. He wandered for days in total fear and shame. Then, the source tells us a procedural lesson was sent from the divine. Qabil witnessed two crows fighting until one was killed. The surviving crow then literally dug into the earth to bury its dead companion. Watching this, Qabil cried out in deep shame, realizing he was less resourceful than a bird, and proceeded to dig the first human grave.
Section 4. The Origin of Zina. And we are going to move to and see how this builds.
The terrible reality outlined in the source is that this first murder wasn't just an isolated event. It was actually the catalyst for a rapid moral collapse. Terrified of facing his father, Adam, Qabil fled. He took Aklima and ran all the way away to Yemen. There, far removed from his father's guidance, he fulfilled his dark desires. By establishing an illicit relationship with his own twin sister against divine law, Qabil officially opened the door to Zina on Earth.
The very first murderer had now become the first to commit this grave transgression.
Section 5. The spiral into shirk.
The source material really emphasizes a profound psychological reality here. Leaving the permitted path causes a rapid descent into the forbidden. And this brilliantly illustrates the domino effect of unchecked desires. I mean, look at how it all started. Just a single seed of jealousy. But that led to murder. Murder led to fleeing and committing Zina. Then, stripped of his faith and fleeing divine wrath, Qabil became the very first human to worship fire. Eventually, he even began crafting clay idols to bow down to. It's crazy how one wrong step cascaded into the ultimate sin in this narrative, shirk, or polytheism.
Qabil's actions cast a massive dark shadow. He didn't just keep these practices to himself. He taught these grave sins to his children. His dark legacy included false beliefs, tribal idol worship, and widespread corruption. Over time, his descendants multiplied and spread across different tribes, cementing these practices and completely abandoning the straight path that was originally taught by Adam.
Section 6. A warning for today.
So why exactly are we analyzing this ancient history today? Well, because our source text makes a super powerful pivot. This isn't just a story about ancient Yemen, it's basically a psychological blueprint for us right now. The narrative points out that the Quran warns people not to even go near zina. Why? Because of that exact domino effect we just explored. Today's youth are facing all these modern gateways, right? The wrong gaze, wrong thoughts, and especially social media. The source warns that a seemingly harmless message, a casual voice call, or an unchecked interaction online, these are the modern equivalents of Qabil's very first step. Satan always attacks from the angle of, oh, it's just a small thing. But as we've seen, that small thing blows the door wide open to massive consequences.
Which brings us to our final, pretty stark question derived from the text. Will you let one unchecked desire rewrite your entire future? The story of Qabil acts as a massive warning that an entire legacy of ruin can begin with just one refusal to control a desire. If you found this explainer of these ancient texts valuable, please share it to help protect others. Thank you so much for joining me today, and as always, keep questioning and keep learning.